different people. So AI can communicate with us in oral language and writing text. So today, I want to focus on these two aspects, speaking and writing, which is the important part of language learning. And I searched a lot of articles about AI, and I roughly categorize them into 4 different categories. The first category is intelligent tutoring system, which means that these kind of tools can tailor activities based on students' performance and give the personal feedback to students. And the second category is automated feedback tools. They can give instant and targeted correct suggestions or performance analysis. The most famous example for this kind of tool is Grammarly. Most of our university students use Grammarly for checking their language errors to make their text more perfect. And the third category is virtual platform. This kind of tool is used to facilitate physical or online classroom and support group projects, which means they are not just used in text work. They also can communicate with students or just help students to communicate with each other. And the last one is the most famous one, is the chatbots. The most famous example is ChatGPT. It can give students interactive dialogue and instant clarification of doubts. So the AI have their feedback to the students, and then students will have different kinds of responses. If students receive the perfect answer and they think the answer is reliable, they like it, they will have happiness, pride, and contentment. However, if the feedback is not perfect, students think that they didn't receive the feedback they want, they feel they will have discouragement, sadness, shame, anger, and upset. So I call this kind of responses emotional responses. In addition to the emotional responses, they always change their learning strategies. According to the feedback they get, they will, if they are satisfied with this feedback, they will recognizing, using, and seeking feedback. This is the positive kind of learning strategies. However, if they don't like the feedback, they will ignore, reject, or view feedback as irrelevant. As I said, the most important kind of AI tool is chatbots. But I am wondering, what are the others? We are always using the large language model, but how to use this kind of language model in language learning? They are different kind of apps. So first, let me focus on speaking. Here is a screenshot from Duolingo, and the user is learning Spanish. So the AI is talking with the user in Spanish. So the user need to choose the object in these pictures, and they speak Spanish. And the AI tools will interact with it to help them pronounce better. But I think this kind of chatbots is boring. So there are much more different kind of AI emerged. If you search this kind of AI in Instagram, you will see these things like this. You see, we even have the human-like robots. They can just be like a beautiful woman and talking with you. This kind of AI is much more charming and make the user much more likely to use it to practice oral language. So this kind of conversational AI enable natural human-like conversation between user and computers through text or speech. Conversational AI system can be text-based or voice-based and include visual elements like avatars. And that we just focus on English academic writing. You can see I'm not English speaker. I'm just learning English. My mother tongue is Chinese. So I think the most difficult part of learning English is writing. And in this year, I became a PhD student. I need to spend a lot of time in academic writing, and I really face a lot of difficulties. The first difficulty can be the linguistic complexity, because English is quite different from Chinese. I need to choose the precise word in the academic writing, and I don't know whether I made some mistakes when I was writing a sentence or paragraph. And the second one is cultural difference. I think most of the English speakers like to tell a story, but our Chinese writer just want to state our opinions. So I face a lot of difficulties when I was writing academic writing. I need to put a lot of forward to make my writing scenes look like a English speaker or English writer. And the expectations. I may expect I can write a very wonderful academic writing, but I fail to do so. So I feel very depressed, and I wonder if I can. I always think, questioning about whether I can be a good writer. And the last one is higher order thinking. Writing is a cyclical process. When I begin to write, I need to set a plan for my writing. How long should I write every day? What kind of writing I need to do? And if I want to publish an article, what kind of journal should I choose? And I need to plan a lot of things before I begin to write. And after when I was writing, I need to correct everything. I need to make anything arranged. And after that, I have to reflect about my writing. I think I need to do more. I need to write more to practice, or I need to have some English writing classes to make me have greater writing skills. So this kind of thing, including planning, reflecting, can be higher order thinking. So although our language learner face this kind of difficulties, we still need to develop skills. And the most important skill is self-regulated learning. So what can AI do? This picture is also created by ChatGPT. And how can AI do? AI can provide feedback. This feedback can be personal and instant. And they can also improve writing quality. I can put the text right by myself into the chatbots, and that the ChatGPT to be my tutor to help me correct the errors. However, we can still get some negative influence, like over-reliance. Some students may cheat in writing. They just give the title into the chatbots, and that the AI tools give them an article or a paragraph as a feedback. So they just don't read any articles and don't write by themselves. They just over-rely us on AI chatbots. And sometimes AI chatbots can inhibit the development of skills because the writer can never beat humans, but humans still need to develop skills. So the over-reliance on chatbots can inhibit their developments. And students in different learning strategies can use AI tools in different way. Students with higher self-regulated skills may use AI tools more properly. However, students with are not equipped with self-regulated learning skills, they may just over-rely on it. So I'm wondering if the students use AI tools for a long term, how can AI affect their self-regulated learning skills? So my future research is mostly focused on AI academic writing. Lastly, I just want to simply talking about research and me. I think people are changed by the process while trying to change the world. We always attempt to create something new like AI tools, but we also receive the influence by the tools made by ourselves. So that's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. That was very, very exciting. So now we're going to handing over to Ogini Bernard to continue here.
All right. Good day, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. All right. My name is Ogini Bernard. I'm a Pidgin playwright, a researcher, a translator, and I'm very happy to be here. And also, I thank the organizers of this program for giving me the opportunity to speak on what I've done for the past 10 to 12 years. Now, exploring how cultural research and creative adaptations, such as translating Shakespeare into Pidgin, can make literature and academic insight more accessible and relatable. Now, first and foremost, when you are doing a research, what do you stand to gain in that research? Are you trying to confuse people or to make people understand what you are saying? And unfortunately, in our probably in our educational systems today, we find it very difficult to understand, probably because of the language that is used, but which I feel that is not supposed to be so. You are supposed to understand what you are researching, and you're supposed to you are supposed to you are supposed to be able to explain to others what you have done. A lot of people, when I was an undergraduate in University of Ibadan, most of us, I included, I'm not exempted, most of us, we write projects, and at the end of the day, we cannot even understand what we have written. We just want to write and give to our supervisors so that they can pass us and we can graduate and we can go, which is not supposed to be so, because that project at the end of the day might be useful to you. And if you cannot decode it, if you cannot use it to solve problems, then you have failed as a researcher and as a graduate. So now, let me first and foremost, I will be speaking based on my mother tongue. Basically, I'm from Edo State, and you all know that, we all know that Nigerian Pidgin, we have two mother tongues. That is the personal mother tongue and the Nigerian Pidgin mother tongue. And we all know that Pidgin, the definition of Pidgin can go this way. Now, when there is no language of communication between two groups of people, they have to come to a common ground where they can understand each other. That is where Pidgin comes in. Now, if you look at the history of Nigerian Pidgin, you'll see that Nigerian Pidgin started from the slave trade. As far back as the time of slave trade, whereby the Portuguese came first, the French came second, then the British came third. Now, if you look at some of the languages, some of the words in Pidgin, you see that there are still some leftover words from the Portuguese. For example, when you talk about sabi, sabi is a Portuguese word gotten from Sabia. Pikin is a Portuguese word that means child. So you will see that there are still some leftover words from the Portuguese that is still we are still using in the Nigerian Pidgin. Now, I'm not going to go into details of the brief history of Nigerian Pidgin because it's not really what we are talking about today. But what we're talking about today is how you can make research easily accessible. Now, what is cultural research? It involves the study of indigenous perspective on learning, achievement, and human behavior with specific cultural context aimed at understanding how individuals construct value phenomena based on their cultural background. Now, indigenous perspective on learning. Now, when you are learning, there are ways you learn. Now, the brain is wired by our culture. It is not wired, and our culture has a particular language that we speak. Now, let's take, for example, now, Mr. A and Mr. B. Mr. A can be thinking in an English way, while Mr. B can be thinking in an indigenous language way. For example, let's say Mr. B is a Yoruba man, while Mr. A is an Englishman. Now, the way a Yoruba man would think will be quite different from the way an Englishman would think. That's what we call the traditional knowledge, the indigenous knowledge that we have. Now, we can also say that the Englishman, the English language is also an indigenous language for the Englishman. Fine, nobody dispute that. But talking about the other man, that is Yoruba man, the way he thinks is Yoruba. He doesn't think English. Now, if you're not giving English, if you're not giving English if you not say, okay, Mr. B, think in English, there will be a major problem because it's going to find it very difficult to probably assimilate. It's going to find it very difficult to decode. And there will be a clash between his own language and the English language. That is the problem that most researchers are facing. And we need to tackle that problem by first and foremost, we think in our local language first, before now, okay, if now I want to say, okay, I want to decode it into an English language, fine. It comes out in a different way. It comes out in a far different way from you thinking in English first before decoding it, before bringing it back to your own local language. It doesn't work that way because so many informations will be missed. Now, what are the objectives of cultural research? We have an objective of cultural research whereby it promotes opportunities for everyone to experience culture, participate in educational programs, and develop their own creative abilities. Now, when you think in a particular way, in a particular language, it will help you to develop your creative abilities. It will help you to develop the brain, and there will be a massive ideas that you can explore. It also promotes quality and artistic renewal. It also promotes cultural exchange, whereby in the sense that okay, I have something in my own local dialect. You have something in your local dialect. Let us exchange. Let us see what you can gain from mine and what I can gain from yours. Now, when I'm gaining from yours, I'm using my own local indigenous thinking perspective to gain from your own language. So it's like an exchange whereby you both understand what you are trying to gain from each other. Then the purpose of the cultural research is to understand how individuals, how they value how they value things based on their cultural backgrounds. Now, there are different types of if you want to conduct a cultural research. In the last 10 years, when I was in 400 level, I studied theater arts at the University of Ibadan, and my specialty is Pidgin literature and creative dramatics. Now, I got into that field not because I just feel like I just want to get into the field, but I feel that we don't understand what we are learning, and the best way for us to understand what we are learning is through our local languages, our indigenous languages. So I got into a private research to translate Shakespeare's works into the Nigerian Pidgin. And we all know that Nigerian Pidgin in West Africa is the fastest growing language ever in Nigeria and also in West Africa. Okay, we don't only have Nigerian Pidgin in Nigeria, we also have Pidgin in different parts of West Africa. We have the Cameroonian Pidgin, we have the Sierra Leonean Pidgin, that's the Creole. And right now, as I'm speaking to you right now, the Creole is legalized, is used as a means of communication in schools and universities. Okay, we have the Ghanaian Pidgin, we have the one from Ivory Coast. They all have their own Pidgin. So now I took it up upon myself to say, okay, I need to do something that is reasonable, that people will understand. And I am also a victim. During my secondary school days in literature, I barely understand what Shakespeare talks about because of the bogus language, the archaic language, and things like that. So all what we do back then in secondary school is to sit down and focus on the teacher. So is what the teacher has said in class, that is what would write during our exams. So which I feel is restricted. I mean, so if I don't come to class, I can't understand. I can't understand what the teacher what the teacher is saying or what the teacher has said. So I took it up upon myself that, okay, now this Shakespeare is widely read, and every year the WAEC syllabus has at least a Shakespeare text for the students to read. And as a literature student, you must pass through Shakespeare, whether you like it or not. As one of the literature you must read, because Shakespeare's works has virtually everything that a man has faced in life. So I took it upon myself, 2014, to say, okay, now I want to start decoding all what Shakespeare has said into an indigenous language. And this, I took it upon myself. I started in 2014. Then I had, that was my personal research. And before I started, I had like a conflict between my teacher and between my teacher saying that the language, Nigerian Pidgin, is used for only comedy. I think that's a story for another day. And that I would not be able to use I would not be able to use a language for comedy to work on tragedy, because some of Shakespeare's works are tragic, that there will be a conflict. The tragedy won't really go well to the audience. I said, fine, I know what you are saying, but I don't believe that this would, what you have said is the right thing. Let me do it. Let me see if I can achieve using Pidgin with tragedy. So I went ahead, I did the translation. It took me over 3 months. I made the soft copy, I did the typing and everything, and I went on stage. I sought for the cast and the crew. I did the performance, and I went on stage, and I was able to achieve what English language would achieve. I was able to achieve everything I wanted to achieve. So now, in ways of getting a cultural research and in ways of making it more accessible, we can talk about adaptation. Now, what is adaptation? Adaptation is the process of reimagining a story from one literary work into another work. It can also be moving a story from one genre to another. Like, for example, a novel, you can adapt it to a film, a stage play. You can also adapt it to a film. You can also adapt a cultural stage play into another culture, depending on how you go about it. Now, there are different types of adaptation, and that's what I did when I was trying to make my own research. Now, I tried to bring, the first one I did was Hamlet. I titled it Oga Pikin, meaning the son of a boss. The son of a boss. So what I tried to do is to take Hamlet, bring it down to our culture in Nigeria, and see how the people will understand it. And fine, it worked. In fact, we had it for 7 days, and the theater was full. We also did interviews, street interviews, whereby the people selling on the street can even relate to the story and can also say, okay, this is what the story is talking about, and can also apply the story to their everyday life. So you can see that alone has carried everybody along. Nobody is left out. No, nobody is left out. It has carried everybody along. Now, there are different types of adaptation. We have the faithful adaptation. We have the free adaptation. Now, the faithful adaptation is a type of adaptation that preserves the original work. It's faithful. It will preserve the original work without omitting any element. Now, we have the free adaptation. This is the replacement of significant elements. You can replace if you want to, but in course of replacement, make sure you are still on the right track. You are still maintaining the storyline and also the basic elements. Then we also have language adaptation. That is, you are changing from one language to another. Then we also have character adaptation. That is, you are changing the characters, you are adapting the characters. Okay, for example, I did not only Hamlet, I also did Romeo and Juliet, and I titled it Rukewe and Julie. Now, in Rukewe and Julie, what I did in that text was I did a character adaptation. I did a part of character adaptation. For example, Rukewe is Romeo. So I adapted Romeo to Rukewe. I brought it down to our own Nigerian setting, and I changed it to Rukewe. Rukewe is a name known in Delta State, Warri to be precise. Now, in the same text, we have the same Romeo and Juliet, we have Taibat. I adapted that name to Taye, bringing it down to our own Nigerian setting. So there are different types of adaptation. You have the faithful, the free, the language, and the character. Now, the importance of this adaptation is to allow people to also see the work in another different perspective, in their own cultural, from their own cultural meaning. It also creates an opportunity for the illiterate to learn, to share opinions and interviews. Now, like I said earlier, when I did the performance, I did not do it for only the academic setting. I also went on the streets. I did an excerpt, like a community theater, theater for development. I did just an excerpt, and everybody could relate. The last man standing on the street could relate. Also, it also makes the moral lesson more accessible and serves as a way of correcting the vices in the community. Now, we also have the characteristics of literary adaptation, that is bringing it to a new perspective, also having more ideas and, making everything, more accessible to the people in the community. Then we also have translation too. That's the way, and which is the act of converting a text or speech from one language to another, while preserving its meaning. And also, there's a difference between adaptation and translation. Now, the translation is the act of converting a text or speech from one language to another and still maintaining its meaning, while adaptation is the process of translating a piece from a medium to another medium, whether bringing it down from one culture to another. Now, we also have a new one, which is adaptation. That's when you are mixing translation and adaptation together. Now, moving on to technology. That's the importance of language research in to help understand how to talk. Now, the indigenous knowledge is important not only for indigenous people but for the world as a whole. Now, the indigenous knowledge also have more to say when discussing a particular topic or solving problems. Now, promoting understanding and respect for each other, the people who have this indigenous knowledge needs to be respected. Now, when you are now merging the indigenous knowledge with technology, now what technology does is to help to organize, is to help to rebrand, is to help to make everything easy. That is where the AI comes in. And with this, how languages can be preserved through technology. That is, if we have a good collaboration with linguists and native speakers to create a good database of audio recordings, if we have a good learning app, and that is, if we have also a good machine learning by building translation machines, just as my colleague said earlier, if also having performances, stage plays and films, which I've done over the years in also bringing out my own research. Also, social media platforms can also help in creating awareness and building connections among the speakers so that these languages will not go into extinction, because most of our languages are going into extinction and we need technology to bring them back. We need technology to preserve them. And technology is just there to organize, to rebrand, and to also set things right so that everybody will be carried along. And there are some times that the technology might be another challenge for some people. That is when let's say the performances comes in, and probably that is when these performances comes in, it helps those that really don't have this ability to deal with technology. It also helps them in a long way. I think I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Ogini Bernard. That was very insightful and engaging. I did learn a lot in the area of language, especially when you talk about the words, which was something new. So now I'm going to leave the room of question. If you have any questions whatsoever, please put it in the chat, or you could raise up if you'd like a question verbally. All right. So in the absence of no questions, so let's move forward. I'm sure all of us must have enjoyed this, and I really want to appreciate both speakers, Ogini Bernard and Chunyi Zhao, for taking the time, putting in to make this research and actually make it accessible to us, because this is engaging, it's thoughtful, and well prepared for. Really, really appreciate you. We are very, and I would like to thank everyone for joining us today, for taking the time to be part of this. Okay, I can see the comment, or rather, question. All right. Yeah. So that brings us to what we're going to be sharing. I'm sure you like, as Tim said, to get to have more questions. So I'm going to be links to those so you can contact them, so you can reach out to them and maybe follow up with them, because they actually have a lot going on their links, different lives, honorable. And also resonance so much for you. Plan to be webinars, like insight webinars, knowledge webinars where you learn something that could be closer to research, where we'll be discussing different innovations, different ideas, and lots are actually pushing the world today. So we'd like to follow us on all our social media tools, which I'm sharing. We also have a waitlist form where you join. Once you'll be able to join us and you'll be receiving regular dates for every event that we have once done with products in your life. You'll be at the front bits of anything happening at Netherlands. So I believe it's time for us to bring this to a close. So I'm going to like 5 minutes to share it and then you could. Oh, I see a question. Okay, so this question says, what are some unique challenges you face when translating complex themes or characters into Pidgin? I believe it's directed Ogini Bernard.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. And there were so many challenges faced when trying to um, when trying to you know get these things done. Fine, would have probably trying to decode these things in Pidgin. I had to read and read and read and read. Then, in the text, there are some little notes found in the text. Okay, for example, meaning of some words, you know, and you have to read the situation. You have to read the character, the what do you call it, the character. What is this character? What is this standing for? Is this character supportive? Is this character not supportive? Is this character contributing to this scene or not? So all those things you have to really understand them first. Then continuous reading. The problem we are having most times is because we do not read and read and read and read and read to understand. But challenges, I had the normal physical challenge, probably let's say the minimal challenge, light issue, being unable to finish up the translations, you know, having those things juggled with my own personal, things that I want to do. Because it wasn't just a day research, it was a research, for years. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Ayodele, wonder if that has answered the question. And also, um, Guy, I can see that. Is there anything you'd like to add? The question says, what are some unique challenges that Ogini has faced when translating themes or characters? So I think I would like to hear from your own perspective. Like, I believe English isn't your first love. So how can you please talk about the challenges you faced when you were like in complex themes or characters, into or into like
It's a question to me.
no, that question was directed to Chunyi.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, sorry, I cannot hear you very well. So, um, could you repeat the question again?
All right. So the question was asked to Bernard about the unique challenges he faced when translating complex themes or characters into Pidgin. So I would like to hear from your own perspective, like relating to English and Mandarin. Yeah. What are the unique challenges you face when translating complex themes or characters? Yeah.
Sorry, I think it's about the internet connections. I still cannot hear very clearly. Maybe anyone can help me to repeat this question again. I can hear resonance.
Yes, I think she's breaking. So probably she can send it via messages. Yes, her voice is breaking. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that's actually right.
I think can still hear you very clearly.
Okay,
I
give me
still
a
can,
minute to
yeah.
adjust my sound.
I think the messages are sent in the inbox in the chat box.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Oh, how do you envision the integration of AI chatbots transforming? Okay. Um, Actually, the interest of AI is from a question I talking with my students because I used to be a Chinese teacher in a Chinese primary school. And at that time, I'm teaching the primary school students about pinyin, just like typing Chinese into computer. And this task is very difficult for the primary school students. They refuse to do that because they think they can just communicate by oral English. If they need to type, they can just talk to the computer instead of typing it down. So it make me thinking about whether should we learn language, no matter Mandarin or English, whether should we learn languages in a traditional way, because uh, we used to write things down, but after we invented computer, we try to use our fingers to type it down, and now OpenAI released ChatGPT, so we can write in a different way. So I think the tools changing the way we learn English and Chinese. And if you are just talking about AI chatbots in transforming learning experience, I think sometimes for me it's very hard for me to just think in English because I always think in Chinese. So when I was writing, I almost like a bilingual. Like I want to write things in English, but sometimes I don't know how to think in English. So I use some Chinese and Mandarin term to express my ideas and opinions. And then I put this draft into AI chatbots, and it will help me to organize this kind of paragraph better. I think AI is a tool. I'm the author to express my own ideas. However, AI is like my pencil or pen. It helped me to write better, to express my ideas to more people. So that's my experience. And I also have some interview with the students in university students, and if they are the foreign language learner, which means they speak maybe French or Chinese or Japanese for as their first language, they also have the same question as can't think in English. So I think AI tools just fix the question for the English language learner about how to translate your idea from different language into English.
All right. I believe that answers Digi's question. Thank you so much for the me, despite the issues that we had with the audio. So I just saw that something had already actually asked the question. I don't know if you can put it in the chat, but please check if possible. If you can't join it, notify me so that I can send this. Yeah, there's something here from something. Okay, so me, I've shared the question in chat. So by Sam Relatable asks, it'll be great to get to hear from me the impact of indigenous language in learning, especially in communication. For someone with tech products for low middle income communities who are more on letter, communication is one of the barriers during this. I wonder how startups think about that in China.
Oh, sorry, your voice is still breaking, so I try to guess what you are saying. I think you want me to answer the question in the text box.
Yes.
So I will read it now. Mm, you mean the apps and tech startup for the middle school students or primary school student in China? Actually, I don't know whether they are related to large language models, but they are truly ad tech app. Actually, in Chinese primary school and even in the middle school, we have a very special technique. It called 希沃 whiteboard. It's a big screen in the middle of the classroom on the wall, and we can touch it. So we can just show students what we want to teach for this class. And they even have some interactive gamification tools in the screen, so students can even touch it. And sometimes if I want to share the worksheet from the students, I can also just like using my phone to take a picture and upload it on the screen so everybody can see it and discuss it. I think it's not an AI based tech, but when we're designing some ed tech app or tools, we still want to make students more engaged. We still want them to just like express their opinions more. Actually, we need students' voice, but not only from their oral language or their text. We also want to see what they write down. Like when you are doing when you are having a mathematics class, student may need to draw something on their textbook and write some numbers. So the teacher need to know what the students are writing and maybe share the same mistakes the students will have, or the wonderful answer for all the class, so we can use this kind of tool to share. Yes, that's the tools in China.
All right, thank you, Tony. Samson, has your question been answered? You could drop it. Okay, yeah, go ahead. You can.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, voice is not clear.
All right. So, yeah, Chunyi, thank you for your response. So that was for learning, insightful. But I think I'm actually more particular about the communication aspect of things. That's so let me put it this way. I'm someone who work in the credit space, serving the low middle income communities or the underserved communities. So these people, they are mostly unlettered. What that means is they can communicate orally, but cannot communicate by writing. So they can't read what you may have written, maybe on a paper, or you're giving them an app to work with, right? They cannot even read, whatever you have on your app, right? Because they cannot read. So I wanted to understand how tech startups in China are going about that gap when it comes to communication, because these people still have to be served, they still have to be reached. So how are they currently going about that? So I know few solutions that are just coming up in Africa, but I'd like to know if you've come across any similar thing in China, and if that's also the case in China, because I don't know if that's the case anyway, but here in Africa, you can find people who can communicate orally but cannot do anything when it comes to writing. So, but maybe for Mandarin, maybe the people can still communicate and still write. I'm not sure. I'd like to um, um, hear you out on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question, but actually I don't know because I don't have that kind of student, and I think maybe we should design some edtech app for them or tools for them. Yes, I will just ask my friends in China. Maybe they are teaching the students you mentioned.
All right. Okay. So I also have a question, or would I got something of interest? Well, I don't know if you can answer. Actually, I can both your your thoughts on this, Ogini and Zhao. So looking at thinking, out of language, I've always wondered how language affects thoughts because it's, knowledge, understanding are all mind. So do you have like any thoughts or any idea of how language in the oral aspect of Pidgin or in how can influence can perception influence people?
Yeah,
Sorry.
your network is breaking. I don't know if you can type the question on the chat box.
All right. Thank you for okay. Yeah, did you get that? I just typed question.
Okay, thank you very much. How does language influence thought? Or I just feel that um every man has every man has when a man is born into a culture, is born into a language, and the way he thinks is quite different from the way another man thinks because of his culture. There's what we call um when the brain is wired in that culture, it thinks in that culture, it thinks in that language. You cannot have a culture and not talk about language, and you cannot talk about language and not talk about culture. They are interwoven, they are together. So it's just something that is natural. It's something that comes from. It's something that is inbuilt. I don't understand it. I hope you understand what I'm saying. It's something that's inbuilt. So when a man is born or when someone is born, is born into a language and is born into a culture. And also we also have parents too. Also, um, that's the time they start teaching the child the indigenous languages, the local languages, and everything. But the first language the child will learn is the cultural language. where that child is born or where that child comes from. Then before the child starts learning other languages. But first, once that language is already is already um, has already been taught as the foundation. Once that language is taught as the foundation, then that child begins to think in that language. Thank you.
All right. Thank you again. That was very insightful. Thank you so much. To do you have what's your perspective on this? What's your perspective on language on thoughts? I hope you got me. Please, can everyone hear me? Okay. So to now, what's your perspective on language and how it
Oh,
influences thinking?
okay. Thank you for the question. Um, I used to major in Chinese language and literature when I was doing my undergraduate program. And how language influence thoughts. Actually, when I was an undergraduate student, my teacher said that language can be kind of thought, and people cannot think in two language. We can speak two language, but we cannot think in two language. Like I'm a Chinese speaker, so when I was thinking about something, the voice inside me is Chinese. Actually, I'm not quite sure about this opinion because sometimes I think when I was learning different language, actually I can think it in different language. So mm, there is a main language in my heart, but sometimes when I was just like interact with myself, maybe this sound a little bit weird, but I can use two or three language to think. And if you are talking about how does language influence thoughts, I think if you learn more language, maybe the different uh, logic in different language can influence you, the way you think about something. Yeah, that's my answer. I'm not a expert in this field, so I'm just uh, give my answer in my personal experience. Thank you.
Okay. Just to add to what my colleague has said, I think that is it because you can also learn more languages. You can also learn more languages and think in those different languages, but it depends on how you can handle it. It depends on how you can combine it and make sure that it doesn't affect whatever you are doing or whatever you want to do. But the first primary language is the cultural language. For example, if I'm taking myself as an example, I think in two languages. That's my local language and Pidgin. But the one I do more is Pidgin because I can say Pidgin started from my state, like from the Niger Delta region and stuff like that. So I feel that it's first this is the primary language first before any other language. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Chunyi. Thank you for that, Bernard. So I think I have a follow-up question because in Nigeria, English language sometimes isn't our mother tongue or primary language. For me, English was my primary language. I grew up learning to speak English at first, so I might not really understand. But I want to ask because I have noticed that you know, people who maybe they learned or maybe they have another language, maybe not English as their primary language, something like Yoruba or Pidgin, which are Nigerian languages, they often find it, difficult, like learning English at first, or rather thinking with English. Yeah. So I think you guys have clarified that you can actually think with both, but you have like one major one. So I would like to know how, it influenced you as a person. So for Chunyi, how did your primary language influence, your learning of English or your communication using English? And for Bernard, how did Pidgin, which is your primary language, how did it influence how you learned English or how you utilize English like for communication?
I think first is about the pronunciation. Because I think when I speak in Chinese, I just use different muscle in my mouth to pronounce. And you can see that maybe people from British or from America, when they are learning Chinese, they are very hard to pronounce things, the same word in Chinese, because they use different muscle. And the second thing is about the word I choose, because sometimes, I mean, I think in Chinese, and when I want to communicate with others in English, I need to translate the thought in my mind into English. So I'm choosing the word existed in Chinese and then translate it into English. I'm not speaking out the English word in my mind. So that's the difference between me and the English native speaker. And there's a very tricky thing is that when I was doing a presentation, uh, as a Chinese people, we always want to give our audience an outline about what I'm going to talking about. Like, hello everyone, I want to talk about AI and language learning. And here's an outline. First, I introduce myself and introduce what is AI tools and how it can influence English. That's the way I'm doing the presentation. But after I go to New Zealand and I listen to the presentation given by the English speaker, they always want to share a story to the audience to make the audience more engaged in. They will say that I will introduce a new friend to you, and it is AI. And how can this friend influence you? I don't know, but I want to share my story about interacting with AI. That's the storytelling way from the English speaker. Yes, and that's my answer.
Okay. As for me, um, I started learning English when I was in. I started speaking English and I started learning English when I was in let's say GS2 or GS3. My English was not that smooth back then, but I started with Pidgin right from when I was a kid. I started with Pidgin right when I was a kid, and up to now, if I want to, up to now, up to as I'm speaking now, if I want to write in a research paper, or if I want to speak, or if I want to read, I read in Pidgin. If there's any material I'm going to read right now, or if there's any research I'm going to do right now, I do it in Pidgin first. Then I convert it to English, because I feel that when you're doing it in Pidgin, um you'd see more ideas, you explore more ideas, you generate more ideas, and then when you now convert those ideas to English, those ideas will still stand. Because I feel that I found out that when I say I want to think in English, I I some things are modeled up, some things are hidden in English. Some things are hidden in English, and some things are because of probably the grammatical structure of how English is, and being unable to decode, hide some things or some vital informations. So I don't really get the best. I don't really get the best when I think in English, or when I want to do stuff in English. I don't really get the best. That's for me. So what I do most times is I do it in Pidgin, then I transfer it to English. So I just feel that this should be one of the things we should also learn in Africa, in Nigeria. Also, thinking in our own local languages and also bringing it out in English. Because if we think in English, I just feel that, yeah, things will just get more complicated. Things will get more very difficult to understand. So that's my answer.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Chunyi and Bernard. So I want to ask, regarding your language learning, journey, was it was your learning, would I call it self-regulated? Like, did you self-learn? Did you have to, so between self-learning and and would I say the usual classroom teaching, how were you able to progress in your language learning? How were you, what actually contributed to your English language being as smooth and as clean as it is today?
Okay. What contributed mainly was just mixing with people, watching movies, reading novels, and just it was both self-learning to me, and also working on my own pronunciation, working on my own um working on my own self. But basically, things like that, it's advisable to use the two, both self-learning and also looking at people, watching movies, English movies, reading English texts. And since I am a literature person, most of the texts are written in Pidgin, except very few that are written in local languages. So that's what I did. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bernard. So for Chuni, how was it for you? And how did you, which ones did you use? Was it self-learning, or what tools did you use?
Uh, if the question is talking about self-regulated learning, I have to explain this term because I use in my presentation. Actually, self-regulated learning is not equal to self-learning. Self-regulated learning is like a student, they need to manage their learning process, not only in self-learning. They can also attend a class and interact with their peers, and they still need to organize the way they're learning. It includes self-learning, but not only self-learning. And when you are learning English, someone will say that the best way to practice oral English is mumming to yourself, like speak to yourself all the time to practice, because when you are facing people, you will feel nervous and don't know how to communicate with others, which can just break your confidence. But I think if you are learning the English, the most important way is to use it in real world. So mumming to yourself and self-learning is not enough. You need to speak out and you need to write down and give your writing task to some real people, or you can just give it first to ChatGPT and then um, get the text to some others, let them read it and give you feedback. I think when a student is learning English, they need to get the feedback from different different way. Like they need a feedback from their teacher, from their peer, and from ChatGPT, or even from themselves, because we still focus on self-reflection. Like in when you are learning, you are doing a self-learning, maybe you will judge yourself and give yourself some feedback. Yes, that's my answer.
Okay, so we can say that the best way to learn is through self-regulated learning.
I think self-regulated learning is not the best way. It's just a learning strategy, because when you are solving some problems, you need to find a way. You need to choose a strategy. So you will choose the strategy like have a good plan, or reflect more, or choose the best way to get feedback. That's the learning strategy. And self-regulated learning is one of the learning strategy.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for that, for clarifying that. Thank you. So relating to research, relating to academic writing, for someone like you, Chunyi, who actually had to write her academic publications in a different language, what are the tips or strategies that you could give to researchers or academic writers who are doing their research or publishing their research in a different language?
I think academic writing is very difficult, even for the native speaker, because when I'm writing academic writing in Chinese, I think it's very difficult for me, because I need to tell the audience a story and um, translate the data into a language. I think uh, it can be much more difficult if I use English to write the academic articles. And my tip is to write more. Like when I get up early in the morning, I will force myself write for like 30 hours every day. And after that, I wake up and I do some other thing. I eat breakfast. So I have to force myself to write more, so I can have like a writing database for me. Uh, I can write an article based on my own writing. They are not good, they are even bad, but I start to do it and I practice it. I need to practice writing, not just thinking about things in my mind, because uh, writing is the way to express myself. I can use many different kind of tools, but the most important thing is I start to writing.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Thank you. So I think it's time for us to start rounding up. But before then, I want to know if anyone else has any more questions. Our time is almost up. All right. Okay, I will take that as there are no more questions. And I would like to appreciate Ogini Bernard and Chunyi Zhao. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. They were really insightful. Like really, they were superb, really. And I learned a lot. And I'm sure everyone who attended had a lot to learn from you guys today. So thank you so much for making our time for this, for engaging us and keeping us on this webinar, keeping us entrapped. Yeah, thank you so much. And also for everyone who has joined us today. Thank you for your time, for your questions. Yeah. And so look forward to our next episode of Big Ideas, Bold Discoveries. Yeah. Okay. So I believe we can all leave the call. Thank you for joining. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.
Well done, guys.
The recording is still on. Can you